The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
You know, for centuries, the story of Angkor's end has been told as this sudden, violent event, almost like a mystery that's already been solved. But when you really start to dig into the evidence, a very different picture emerges. It's not a story about a single moment of collapse. It's about a slow, almost deliberate, self-inflicted unraveling.
So we're going to start where most stories of Angkor tend to end, in a city that's been swallowed by the jungle. But the real question here isn't just what happened, it's how. And the answer, well, it pretty much challenges everything we thought we knew.
Just look at this. These are the ruins of a civilization that was, for all intents and purposes, at the absolute height of its power. This was a metropolis of stone and water, home to a huge population, and today it's just a monument to absence, a ghost.
Which brings us to the central question, really. How does a city of nearly 1 million people just disappear? I mean, think about that. A city of that scale, that complexity, it doesn't just vanish into thin air. It gets emptied. The real question is, why? And what or who was responsible?
Okay, so the popular story, the one you've probably heard, is pretty straightforward. It points to one single event, a Siamese invasion in 1431, a catastrophic attack from the kingdom of Ayutthaya. The fatal blow. It's clean, it's simple. But the geoarchaeological evidence, it tells a much darker and way more complex story. That invasion, it wasn't the cause of the fall. It was just a final push against a state that was already hollowed out from the inside.
To really get to the bottom of Angkor's fall, we have to understand the source of its power. And it wasn't just the incredible stone temples you see. No, the heart of Angkor, it was a machine built from water, an achievement on an unbelievable scale, and, as it turns out, of unbelievable fragility.
So, what archaeologists call Angkor is a hydraulic city. And what that means, basically, is that this entire sprawling urban landscape was defined by one thing: its ability to control water. We're talking about this immense network of canals, embankments, and massive reservoirs, they called them bares, that literally tamed the monsoon. They'd store its water during the wet season and then carefully distribute it during the dry.
And here's the crazy part. For centuries, the jungle completely hid the true scale of this thing. We had no idea. But now, with modern tech like LiDAR, we can digitally peel back that canopy, and what's underneath is just staggering. A massive engineered grid covering over 1,000 square kilometers. This was, by far, the largest city in the pre-industrial world. And the whole thing, every last bit of it, depended on that water grid.
I mean, this system was an act of pure genius. There's no other way to put it. It controlled the weather, it fed a massive population, and it was a symbol of divine power for the rulers. But it was also an act of hubris, profound overconfidence. This wasn't just about managing resources. It was a statement. It was a belief that they had truly conquered nature.
But that's the thing about hubris. That perfect machine, the one designed for ultimate stability, it actually contained the seeds of its own destruction. The cracks in the grid were appearing long before the final collapse.
So when you look at the archaeological record, you see this system was under constant stress. First, it wasn't a build-it-and-forget-it kind of thing. It needed constant, massive effort just to maintain it, let alone expand it. And over centuries, it just got more and more complex, more tangled up in itself, until it became rigid, resistant to any real change. People were just making these ad hoc, makeshift repairs, basically papering over deep structural problems. And all that did was make the entire system more and more fragile.
And this is what researchers mean when they talk about cascading failure. Think of it like a line of dominoes. Because the system was so interconnected, a single break in one canal didn't just cause a local flood, it sent shockwaves through the entire network. The very thing that made it so powerful, its interconnectedness, had become its single greatest vulnerability, its Achilles heel.
So you've got this incredibly complex, fragile system already under a ton of stress. And then it gets hit with something from the outside, a massive shock it was never ever designed to handle. We're talking about a period of violent, unprecedented chaos in the climate. And we know this because scientists have been able to reconstruct the climate from that time. They've done it by drilling into ancient trees, analyzing sediment cores. It's incredible science. And what they found for the 14th and 15th centuries wasn't just a bit of bad weather.
It was a climate system completely in crisis, just swinging wildly from one devastating extreme to the other.
So the system was hit with this brutal 1-2 punch. First, on one hand, you have these prolonged, decades-long mega-droughts that just weakened the whole kingdom. I mean, the year 1403 was the single driest year in the entire 750-year record. But then, and this is the second punch, those droughts would be shattered by these sudden, unbelievably violent monsoons. We're talking floods so powerful that they could choke a major canal with sand and gravel in a single go. Just useless after that. The very water that was the source of life for the city had turned against it.
Okay, so let's take stock. The environment is in total crisis. The city's critical infrastructure is failing. You would think this is the moment when the leadership, the ruling elite, would step up, right? But the evidence points to something else entirely. Not a fight for survival, but a slow, deliberate retreat.
This right here, this is the critical question. A real chicken and egg problem. Did the infrastructure fail, forcing the elite to leave? Or did the elite leave, which caused the infrastructure to fail? For a long time, everyone just assumed the first one was true, that the system collapsed and the kings had no choice but to go. But the latest evidence, it completely flips that idea on its head.
Because here's what the geoarchaeological evidence shows us. The decline in population, it had already begun before the worst of the climate chaos hit. The elite, the people in power, were already packing up and leaving. Think about what that means. The infrastructure didn't fail because of some act of God or a natural disaster. It failed because the people with the power and resources to maintain it were already gone. The will was gone.
So you see, this wasn't some sudden, chaotic collapse. For the powerful, it was more like a managed decline. By the end of the 14th century, the royal court was already shifting its attention south. They saw new opportunities in maritime trade closer to modern-day Phnom Penh. And in doing so, they basically left the massive population back at Angkor to fend for themselves. So when that Siamese army finally did show up in 1431, they weren't sacking a thriving capital. They were just kicking in the door of an already empty house.
So the end of Angkor, it's not really a mystery about a sudden collapse. It's much more of a case study, a warning. It's about denial, it's about overconfidence, and ultimately it's about the failure of those in power to adapt to a world that was changing right under their feet. Historian David Chandler put it perfectly, I think. Angkor became a city devoted more to ritual display than survival. I mean, that just captures the fatal disconnect, doesn't it? As the actual foundations of their kingdom, the water, the food, the infrastructure, were literally cracking, the leadership was still focused on building temples. They were obsessed with the performance of power, while completely ignoring the things that actually made that power real.
So in the end, Angkor's fall really wasn't a mystery. It was a choice. Or rather, a whole series of choices made by people who genuinely believed their system was too big, too powerful to fail. They looked back at centuries of incredible success, and they mistook it for a guarantee of future permanence. It's the ultimate irony, isn't it? A civilization that engineered its environment with such genius ultimately failed to engineer a future for itself.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling question. The story of Angkor is a warning, carved in stone. It's this quiet testament to a simple, terrifying fact that even the greatest civilization on Earth can be erased. Not by an invading army, not by an act of God, but by its own unwavering, unshakable belief that it is invincible.